G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff Ukraine War update for the 15th of July 2026. Now as the war continues, I'll continue to bring my independent, unique coverage from both sides of the war with my opinions and mine alone. I am sponsored by you, the viewing audience. Now, as we look at the Ukraine war map, I'm reminded that a lot of this will be, let's say, filtered. We're not going to get the whole truth, remember, but Kiev was pummeled. 8 ballistic missiles. Now, these were guided. And they got hit by 135 strike drones. There's no way this is organic. Russia had to... Ukraine was sitting pretty, shooting down not maybe 80 to 90% of incoming. They were pretty comfortable. What happened? Russia hit the right target at the right time, and that Omsk took out a huge stockpile, and everyone's scrambling. This is the problem with reliance on modern weapons. I've said often, and people know what to do. I said, Ukraine, they get a couple of Yak fighters. They could have a couple of Yugoslav 130s could have done a better job, or at least the same job. Couple of just use cheap air-to-air missiles. Just use cheap guns. Heck, the Swedish have very good Swedish or Finnish have a very good flak gun. Heck, some of the NATO guns are pretty good. This war is so ad hoc and so incompetently run. And it's because Ukraine wants a Ukraine victory. You're not getting one. You're getting pummeled. If Europe goes in, that gives Russia a green light to unleash its entire army and rocket forces. And worse, you invade Russia, you get now China, India, Brazil, North Korea. You unleash stupidity. But the Democrats, they all think all you have to do is put on a white horse and tra-la-la-la on into Russia and it'll be fine. They'll collapse. No. Putin would rather arm every Russian from Belgrade to Moscow than burn Eastern Europe. And then what are you going to do? Even if you win, you now have trillions of dollars in damages that take a century to repair. Maybe you think, oh no, it'll only take a decade to rebuild a city. It's not like World War II, where you only got a dozen or 2 dozen cities to rebuild. No, Russia will do far more damage. They've already done $1 trillion damage to Ukraine. And that's with light attacks. Russia's building up to attacking with can now afford to attack with 2 missiles a day. What are you going to do when it's 4 or 8? And when they're using their stockpiles, and when they have all of Chinese production. Remember, China has a huge unemployment. China can mobilize all that to produce weapons for Russia if they really wanted to. And then what are you going to do when it's 16 missiles a day flying across Eastern Europe and 16 missiles flying at Taiwan, 16 missiles flying at from North Korea to the south? What are you going to do then? Are you going to say, oh, God will sort it out? Or, oh, it was a worthy sacrifice to defeat Putin? Yeah? That's what liberals will do, exactly. But no, Lindsey Graham has the plan. Clip Putin's wings and talk everyone down. We all know Zelensky's an asshole who won't know. We all know it. We know the flying Lindsey Graham's ointment is his good friend Zelensky. Lindsey Graham, I'm not saying is naive. I'm just saying he was hopeful. He may have been sacrificed in order to make sure this bill goes ahead. I'm not saying Russian intelligence killed him, because there's no point. The bill is known to the public. It was written 2 years ago. They've just been getting all the names, all the businesses, all the transactions, all the banking networks, all the names of every ship that comes and goes from Russian ports. That takes time. Tracking them all down. Who really owns them? Where do they park? That takes time. Those are physical things you have to track down. It's taken 2 years to unravel the entire trade network of Russia. And so Lindsey Graham was most likely murdered by fanatics who wanted to make sure his bill was passed, as is. A martyr for Ukraine. No one wants to consider that. But why would Russia do it? Why would they martyr him? They know it would guarantee his bill would pass without debate. Heck, it's on the floor now. It wouldn't have been on the floor for 2 months had he lived. And Russia would have not cared and still don't care, which means they do have a plan. No, the only one who benefits from Lindsey Graham's death is Ukraine. It cuts 2 months off the process of the bill going through the committee. The committee's passed the bill. It's now gone to what's between committee and what's that the introduction of a bill phase, where lawyers go over the bill, the legalese and constitutionality of the bill is to be checked. Though the committee is supposed to do that, they often rely on experts. Yeah, but the committee's already said once the bill, finalised, it will go from committee to straight to introduction to be written up into the House. So, yeah, there's no way Russia would do that. They know what will happen. They're not idiots. The only people who need this bill expedited and a martyr to make sure it's passed is Ukraine. But you don't want to know that. You don't want to think that your ally is that, would do that, but they're not your ally. They're just that guy you met in college, you put his hand in your pocket and you don't know how to say no. Well, a lot of Americans know how to actually know how to say no. It's the establishment who see a golden opportunity to sell more weapons who won't say no. But really, why would the war hawks want a bill to bring around the early end of a war and crush Russia? Well, then they can sit back and watch the war with China and India fighting over Russia. I don't think they will. I don't think India's declared, and I don't think India and Russia would. I don't think China would, because if China attacks Russia now, BRICS unravels. China needs BRICS. It needs a supply line and sanction proofing when it starts a blockade on, consider this, using the same tactics America against Taiwan. That is why Iran keeps stirring America. Taiwan, Iran. Similar situations. Blockade. China, study the American blockade. See how they bring down Iran. Then apply that sameness to Taiwan. Possibly Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, all probably Vietnam too at the same time. And seize the entire South China Sea. Seize the Spratly Islands. Seize $1 trillion in gas and oil. Bigger than Russia's reserves, by the way, I think, or at least equal to. Plus, don't forget all the nickel, all the sulfides from volcanoes. Sulfides, as you may or may not know, fertilizers. And because it's usually all powder or at least small, they can just suck it up off the ocean floor. Us Japanese. They're looking to mine, along with the Americans, a huge fast track in the Pacific. And China's now racing in to try and cut them off. Claim the islands for themselves. Make sure that we cannot get those minerals. So the Ukraine war is most likely a test run. China looking at test run of missile defences and all these things. So they don't want this war to end. So there's no way they're going to let Lindsey Graham's blockade. But enough for now on the blockade. We'll get to that, the blockade of Russia, back to that soon. So for now, all you need to know is 8 ballistic missiles, and those mostly were EMP burst, electronic jamming missiles, the KH-59. But there was some 69s and some 135 strike drones. And we don't exactly know, but let's say 90%. So at 145, 115, but they're saying here 135. So there was probably just a typo. One of them's wrong, but it doesn't really matter. But all of that was just for Kiev. That doesn't include all the other drones and strikes around Ukraine, which there were 17 in total. Sumy, Kharkiv, Dnipro, Odessa. Actually, Odessa and the port of Odessa were hit. There were new explosions, a second attack. Some place on the coast was bombarded by the Russians as well. And attacks in Zaporozhye. So as we look at the combat front, we see... Sorry about that. My internet's slow today. A lot of action without any land. Nothing significant has fallen. But Russia's renewed attacks in Kupiansk, of course. Continuing in the Lyman area with fresh attacks in different areas. Of course, glide bombing continues of Kharkiv and Drupanilia ahead of... See, the Russians are holding back the advance until they've softening up the target. In other words, hitting heavy artillery, taking out as many troop concentrations as they can, and setting up to clear minefields and the roads. And, of course, as you can see, they've, evened up the front, but they've advanced in a few little areas. As you can see, they're beginning the siege. Also artillery outside of Zavernsk. So it looks like they're going for an F squeeze. If you ever seen an F clamp, just basically up one and then down. So, which means, they're not looking to push the Ukrainians out anymore. They're looking to crush them. Coming up, killing... The original strategy looked like coming up the middle, right? Flowering out, or a frond leaf, killing killing the fortified possessions from two sides, pushing the Ukrainians out of Seversk and up these roads here. Now it looks like just smash them, cut them off, and whatever retreat, and then smash their way to this corner. You do realise with less targets, Russia could just go Onsk, 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 if they have the budget, the will, and yeah, just pretty much scorch Ukraine out. But the thing about the Onsk is they seem to be incendiary, but the size of the incendiary. But for some reason, whenever they've gone off, they've never shown the actual explosion. But it's pretty big, by all accounts. 11-story building wiped out. Ain't no laughing matter. The only thing Ukraine could hope with the Onsk is, and you can see this, the Ukrainians have lost territory. Let's see. All of this. So, whatever they're holding on to, I think it's now 80% of Kostyakovia. But they said the Ukrainians haven't surrendered in Kostyakovia, so the Russians are rooting them out. 80, 90, 200 each day. They just they're fighting to the last ammunition. That's fanatics, and when you get that level of fanaticism, that's the government doesn't care about your life. And the next soldier realizes that when he, and I don't know whether or not we'll see lines of Ukrainians lining up to surrender like the Italians did. Who knows? It has happened before where a fanatical army turns around and says, I choose life. And you look historically, it is, there are, if the promise, if they could see Ukrainians coming home alive from Russia, and there's none of, for now, Ukraine media is full of torture and that, but yet you see the Red Cross, go to the Red Cross site for prisoner exchange. None of the Ukrainians are tortured. They're all healthy. They don't look like Japanese, the Australians who came back from the Japanese POW camps. They don't come back to... Now, those were war crimes. Ukraine is trying to scare its own soldiers into fighting to the death. But once that wears off, once they lose all hope, it won't matter. And if they run out of ammunition and the Russians take them prisoner, and more and more Ukrainians see those living soldiers, it's going to happen. People are going to spread the message. Please surrender. So don't think Lindsey Graham's bill is going to make a difference yet, because Russia still has options on the table. It has between 1 to 2 months before that bill takes hold. Now, they may pass it tomorrow, but it's still going to take hold. And Russia may find that India will hold out. So will China. And they may get 3 months, 4 months before they have to decide whether they're going to blow half of the map away or start building a border wall or cede some territory to buy time. Now, it looks like for now, there's a little bit of territorial loss for Ukraine, but that's it. and it's in that yellow zone or grey zone, whatever you want to call it, the no man's land. The Ukrainians in no man's land are getting pushed back. The front lines are advancing. So I think the only hope for an end to this war now may actually lie in the Lindsey Graham bill, because Ukraine has not been able to follow up on yesterday's offensive and now having to defend positions, and Russian retaliation is quite, for all those attacks yesterday, has been quite powerful, and they've attacked Sochi again, which means there's going to be another powerful attack tomorrow. Now, like I said, I'm not sponsored. Well, I rely on you, the viewing audience, to join my Patreon, to buy my books, and to buy my merch. Yes, I'm not a rich man. I'm not some rich kid with thousands of dollars in electronics and hundreds of thousands of dollars to put into a merch store to sell you a couple of hoodies for $65 with Eat the Rich on it. You know, this is the problem. The other side is well funded. They also got state sponsors with NGOs like the Soros Foundation. What do we have on the right? You don't see the Heritage Foundation funding funds hardly anybody. Most of the Republicans, this is one of the reasons why people don't like the Republicans, is they hardly fund anyone. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing or bad thing. As an independent journalist, no one should be state funded. That's my opinion. But the problem is, Empire Valves, one word, empirevalves.myshopify.com. The problem is, the left, they got state funding and the fanatical fund. The right's got to step up their game or they'll get outspent. It's how you don't think it matters? Look at New York. No, yeah, Hillary lost $1 billion, but it doesn't mean if they fail every time. And they keep grinding away. That grind mindset is wearing you down because you're not stepping up. Now, US senators want to pass the bill, and they're not going to, without Trump's amendments. Now, Trump wanted to expand the bill to include Iran, Hezbollah, and other organizations. Now, other people have said no, and this again, as I think, this is why Lindsey Graham was murdered, to get this bill as is through the House to fund Ukraine. Ukraine, if there are amendments, Ukraine wouldn't get $90 billion. They'd only get a share of $90 billion. And technically, that isn't US money anyway. It's European money. The US bill is only to back that with sanctions. The Europeans are spending the money, including socialist Spain, to get those missiles and drones to Ukraine. The US, on the other hand, are going to sanction Russia and try and blockade the economy, isolate it. Now, the Europeans have already tried that and it hasn't worked. But all I'm saying is that it is a possibility that the US sanctions can work where the Europeans failed, because the Americans account for a much higher percentage of the economy and they're adding to the European blockade. The Europeans aren't lowering their tariffs, they're increasing as well. So the Europeans increase it, America increases it, and if enough Temu products don't arrive because Temu's shut off or Alibaba's shut off, then yes, we might actually see China decide to put the knock on Putin's door and say, all right, time to close up shop, start building the border, we'll buy you a month, we'll buy you 2 months, but that's about it. You know. And if Zelensky won't accept it, then will deliver you a couple of long-range missiles, not the JDAMs or any of the broken, not just JDAM, sorry, JDs or any of the JF series or JL series missiles. Those are written off. But don't forget, there's still a lot of reliable older missiles in China and North Korea that are not duds, such as the Banderol, and the production numbers are increasing. And this has the Ukrainians worried because they can do a lot of damage. Now, they're only a 50-kilogram warhead, unlike the Omsk or whatever. But if China backs and North Korea back the production of a couple of more Omsk missiles, they can start every month blowing away Ukrainian cities. And that will undermine Lindsey Graham's bill, because the Americans will go, shit, we're not rebuilding Ukraine. No, stop the war now. Nope. Ukraine, what are you going to do? Borrow $1 trillion? You'll never repay it. No one's got that money to waste or spare. If the rebuilding's $2 trillion, they'd drag it out and eat up most of that money with good union jobs, working by the hourly rate. In other words, leaning on the shovel 7 out of 8 hours, watching concrete dry instead of setting up a house, moving to the next one, instead of working in rotation, which good teams do, by the way. But the Banderol, now these Russia succeeds in. Now, that's the point, isn't it? If they succeed in increasing missile production from 2 to 4 to 8. Now, flies at altitude between 400 to 200. I think it can actually it can fly much lower than that and much higher than that. But I think that's the band in which they have their best line of sight for guidance. No, I do not think it primarily is a satellite, and I don't think it's as vulnerable to electronic warfare as I believe. I think all this is for now is a cheap cruise missile with a small warhead, but all tests, all prototypes are often, particularly with weapons, I should say, are the cheapest. If it works, they increase the production. Sometimes increase the warhead, and they'll slowly, like they did with the glide bombs. Now that they're up, and they will put a few 3,000 kilogram bombs onto Ukrainian positions. No, for now, we'll see what happens. Because Russia's plan right now is to cripple Ukraine's fuel and transport networks in retaliation. But the Senate's bill could squeeze Putin. There's no doubt. And The Hill is reporting that, and others are reporting that. And for now, reading through it, early version was 500%, with at least 63 countries in the crosshairs. Now, there are some carve-outs. This still allows for gas and oil to Japan, crude oil to Hungary and Slovakia, possibly India, natural gas for France, Japan, Hungary and Belgium, primarily in their targets. Anyone who's more than 15% of total annual exports. So they're breaking down Russia's gas exports, saying, right, those who get more than 15% of the total, right? So they're looking at the larger end of the economic scale and going, right, we're going to target the top 2 or 3. This is basically trying to sanction BRICS without naming BRICS by creating economic rules and tariffs, which will also force India, the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, Singapore, and other Central Asian countries where sanction evasion is taking place to get a legal workaround to say, right, we're buying, you're only going to sanction if it's above 15%, so they'll take it to 14.9999%, or pretty close to 15%, and Singapore will go, well, this company will buy gas from Russia, and this will buy so much from India and China, and get around by, whoopsies, we didn't know that it was all from Russia, we bought it from an Indian agent. So there's going to be a lot of wiggle room, and that's where it will be, where how do they overlap the violations? Like I said earlier, Trump wanted to add other groups. Now again, there's a Ukrainian drone interceptors. Ukraine permission to co-produce Patriot interceptors with Germany. Right, the drone interceptors, Ukrainian drones. Not all of them are crap. It's just the majority of them are crap. But these first-person drones, well, according to the Marines, the US Switchblade is better. But what they probably want from Ukraine are those interceptors for Kuwait, etc. Because they can get them now in large quantities. And again, if they can get them in such large quantities, why aren't they defending Ukraine with them? Why are they selling off the excess? Well, Ukraine's reasoning is they need the money to fund other things. And that is probably reasonable thinking. And if you can produce a lot of drones, but you don't need them, then you trade them for what you do need. So don't think Ukraine and the arms industry is clean, where everything going to Ukraine or coming from Ukraine is going to be clean. I think there's going to be a lot of mess. And that mess is where the war is going to be decided. How much Ukraine can endure before they say enough's enough. Right? Now, I'm not going to say Russia in the next 2 months are going to take all that, or even all that. But they could, in theory, destroy enough of that to make Ukraine go, well, that's it. If we continue this war and they take all that, and we can't push them out, then if they could destroy, let's say they destroy Dnipro or Kharkiv, or basically say, right, you could protect Kiev, but we'll systematically destroy our way up Mykolaiv, start destroying their ports. Now, it's a fine line between at what point Europe will intervene. But if Russia can find that ugly spot where it can make Lindsey Graham's tariffs hurt Europe just as bad by saying, well, if you're going to destroy our economy, we're going to destroy Ukraine. Are you going to call their bluff? Are you willing to call their bluff? Do you really want to be responsible for rebuilding Ukraine? Because ultimately, Europe can't. Europe's opportunity cost of this war is $3.5 trillion. US opportunity cost is $1.2 trillion. That's why really the Democrats want this war to go. Because in bad economic times, you're more likely to vote left than right. You're more likely to take it out on capitalism than you are communism. I'm talking about large groups. Don't underestimate how stupid large groups and number of people can be when they're desperate, especially financially desperate. You don't have to trust me on this, but please, if you are going to trust me on something, at least trust me on voting patterns. When the economy is good, people vote for the economy to get better. When the economy is bad, they vote to punish who's ever in power. And they have, however, proviso, they punish Republicans. Because remember, California and other blue states have shown that no matter what, they vote blue no matter who. That's why they have slogans. So there are provisos in there. And the Republicans have no messaging to counter that yet. Now, if it was me, I'd have high-speed rail. A photograph of high-speed rail lines over 10 years and go and put Gavin Newsom's face there and say, you know who's to blame. That's all you need to flip California. One single powerful message. Closed rail. All you need is to hammer the failure. 30 billion, 40 billion, 50 billion. All the closed businesses. Just show all the closed areas. Show Rodeo Drive 12 years ago and compare it to today. Show Venice Beach then and now. Show when Gavin Newsom came to office and now. Just do the comparison and you will get rid of him faster. The one thing Californians love is their standard of living. All you have to do is run the Your Next campaign. Show every disaster from San Francisco onwards. See, because that's the problem. No one sees it until it's in their backyard. Californians walk around looking at their feet. But you open up California's eyes and I'm telling you, that state's flipped. And it can be the same with Ukraine. Enough people see how Ukraine really looks. They won't want this war to continue either. If you actually care about the people of Ukraine, you would want to end their suffering. Because having the Russians take eastern Ukraine is not going to decrease the lives of the people in Western Ukraine. The people of Western Ukraine had nothing to do with Eastern Ukraine for over 10 years. So their suffering has got nothing to do with Russia occupying Eastern Ukraine. It's got everything to do with Kiev. And that's another reason why the Democrats want this war to go on. To try and shift the anger onto Russia. And it's failing. It's the same in Russia. Russians are looking at the Ukraine war and going, nothing's changed. War on, war off doesn't matter to me. My life is the same. So why should I care? And the fact that the war ending might improve life in Russia, and that is another reason why Europe doesn't want it. They don't want Russians to be happy. They want everybody to be just as miserable and stupid as them. Oops, the leg has just started to give way on my table. Oops. So I'll leave you with that thought. That Lindsey Graham was murdered not to stop the bill, but to pass the bill. Thank you for listening, and bye for now.